Now we're gonna talk about useReducer. This is the API for the useReducer. You can provide the reducer function, initial arguments, and init function. It is an alternative to useState. It will accept a reducer of type state and the action, and it is going to return a new state. useReducer is preferable to useState. Yeah, when you have a complex state logic that involves multiple subvalues. This is the most important line. When the next state depends on the previous one. That's why the counter example is very useful. The next state is dependent on the previous one. Then you can use the useReducer. So we're gonna follow this example. I'm gonna create a new counter variable, counter component. You can convert into capital, select title or users. Follow this pattern. In index, yes, select title, yep, select title. Here we need to use the users. We created a new component, counter. Import React. Let's create a new function, counter. Counter function. It is going to return something, count value, and I'm gonna log here count value. We also need, I'm gonna use fragments here. So let's use toButton, on click. Let's log something, increment. We also need another method for the decrement. So we have two methods. Now I would like to use that counter component in my index.js file. So where is the index.js file? Yeah, I'm gonna add the counter. Let's use that counter. Open the users, and I'm gonna log the length of the users. Now you can see that we have the counter. Let's try to check it out. Is it working? Yep, it's working, but we have to add the minus sign here. I forgot to remove the breakpoints. So how can you define the state with the reducer? It is going to give us the state and the dispatch function to update the state. And useReducer will take the reducer value and the initial state. We did not define the reducer and the initial state. Let's define the reducer. It's a function and it is going to take the state and the action type. This is how you will build the reducer. I'm gonna add the switch statement on the based on action. If you want to perform this one, then we need to update something. Let's define the initial state. This is the initial state. I will have the count property. By default, it is 1. So we added the initial state here. Initial state. Yep. Now I'm gonna update the value state.count plus 1. For the decrement, I'm gonna follow the same pattern or the same strategy. Decrement state minus 1. Default, by default, if action will not match, you can throw the error or you can throw the default state. I'm gonna throw the error. How can you change the state? You gotta call the dispatch function. Here you will provide your type, which is increment. When you dispatch the action, it is going to call this function. It is going to run this code. For here, I'm gonna dispatch type should be decrement. Let's see what will happen. Or you can convert into the paragraph to make it into new line. Let's do it. Get rid of this one. So I cannot see the count value because I did not log the count. So I can log the count state. This time I can access the state from this reducer. Now you can see the count value, which is incrementing now. If you check the React component, you will see the reducer. The count is 7. We are using the reducer hooks. It's decrementing the value. So when you dispatch the action, you must need to provide the type. So it is going to run that code. I can put the breakpoint to show you what will happen. So I'm going to click this one. It has stopped at this breakpoint. Now I got the counter value, which is 0. It is going to add the increment. Similarly, you will see the count value, which is 1. It is going to increment the value. So this is how you will manage the complex state with useReducer. I can show you more about the definition of reducer. A reducer is a pure function. This reducer is a pure function. This is a pure function that calculates the next state based on the previous state and the action that has been dispatched. It will always return a new state based on the action. Current state, action, and then you will get the new state. A pure function takes an input and returns an output without changing the input, or anything else. That means reducer returns a completely new state that substitutes the previous one. That's how the pure function reducer works.